Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Dave Romanchuk and I am the Director of Product Management here at Revenova. We're very excited to welcome you in today to today's webinar, the 7-Eleven Product Release Webinar. Myself and the team have been hard at work over the past few months to deliver this product to you, and so we're very excited to share with you some of the features that we have to show you today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. As with previous webinars, you can always watch the recording or share it with your coworkers if they're unable to attend this webinar. We'll be uploading the recorded session to the RLC along with our YouTube page as well. And then as always in webinars past, if you do have questions, we do ask that you post them into the Q&A feed at the bottom of the RingCentral webinar page. So to start, I just want to give a brief overview of the 7 items that we'll be getting into the details on for this demo. So I'm just going to run through these quick and then I'll hand it off to the team for them to take you through the details. So the 5 new features that we're showcasing here, one of the ones that I'm most excited about that I'll be getting to demo for you first is the LaneIQ Network. So more to come on that. We're also going to be taking a look at the auto creation of API and stored rate quotes, the mass import and update of third-party user credentials, the load email communication defaults, and lastly, for the new features, the auto application of load accessorials. In addition to these new features, we also have 2 enhancements that we'll be taking a look at to existing functionality, and those 2 enhancements are enhancements to the load tracking administration page, as well as enhancements to the Falvey shippers insurance integration. So with that said, I'm going to dive into LaneIQ Network. So the first question, what is LaneIQ Network exactly? So we're very excited about this feature and we think you will be too. You can think of LaneIQ Network as Revenova's first foray into analyzing and leveraging big data in order to assess spot market rates. So as many of you know, the primary spot market tool that we tell our customers to use within the TMS is RateIQ, and that tool allows you to pull in data from multiple different sources like DAT and TruckStop and FreightWaves. And what LaneIQ Network is essentially another stream of data that can come into your system. And that stream of data is data that is generated by mutual Revenova customers. So you can think of LaneIQ Network as a cloud-based repository in which all spot carrier quote rates are automatically seeded into this global or this cloud-based repository from all Revenova customers that opt in. So as I said, this is kind of our first attempt, our first foray into leveraging the big data that the hundreds of customers that are building tens of thousands of loads a week, sending that data up into the cloud-based repository and then anonymizing it and then providing back into Revenova your own particular instance into the RateIQ tool for calculating and displaying the spot rate data on a load-by-load basis. The first thing I'm going to show you is the simple setup for how easy and painless it is to configure this. What you're looking at here is the TMS admin page, so hopefully all of the admins out there are familiar with this. And as I said, very simple and straightforward. One caveat I will say, so this will be an opt-in feature, so all Revenova customers will need to opt in when they perform the 7-Eleven upgrade. Pretty painless opt-in feature. And then once you do opt in, then our help desk will be able to install the package, no problem. And really there's only a couple more setup steps involved. So on the TMS admin page, we have one new checkbox here. So if you scroll down on the right-hand side, this new LaneIQ Network enabled checkbox. So it's as simple as that. You check that box, you save the page, and you've activated LaneIQ Network. The one other setup piece, which will be, you'll have assistance from the Revenova help desk, is in your credentials page. So similar to every other API integration that we work with, there's a set of API credentials for security such that you can enter these credentials and gain access to the various providers. So when you come to your TMS admin credentials page, you'll come to Global Services and scroll down to the LaneIQ Network card. Within the LaneIQ Network card is, as you're all familiar with, a set of user ID and password credentials that Revenova will be providing to you once you've opted into the service. So it's as simple as that. You check the box on the configuration page, activate your credentials, and you're off and running. The last setup component that I'll show you is something that hopefully most of you are familiar with, which is the RateIQ Calculations tab. So again, back on my TMS admin page, I'm going to click the RateIQ Calculations link here. I'm in my demo environment, so I have the single truckload rate calculation shown here. And when I come to this page, the new feature that you're going to see here is the new data source within the rate calculation rules. So the dropdown, as you can tell, we have a brand new data source, which is LaneIQ Network. And this is how you're going to be feeding data into the LaneIQ Network RateIQ calculation. So I have LaneIQ Network identified here with the look-back days and the search radius and my thresholds, as you've seen in RateIQ demos past. So with all that setup done, the payoff, it can be seen on the load. So I'm going to hop over to this tab, and what you'll see here is this is a load that I've recently built in my demo environment, and this load is a load moving from Boston to Denver. So our good old friends Boston Beans and Denver Deli Meats. Then on the left-hand side, we have our RateIQ tool, which again, familiar to you all, but if you hit the drop-down, the new feed of data is what you're going to see here. So LaneIQ Network is the new data source being fed into RateIQ, which is going to give you even more data when you're making your spot rate calculations to determine what you need to be paying the carrier. So as you can see, I'm in my demo environment right now, so I only have a handful of loads in the system at the moment, but as you can imagine, as we onboard more and more customers into the LaneIQ network, this amount of data is only going to exponentially grow. The LaneIQ network tool that you have access here to now is really going to enable your users to get the most accurate, up-to-date pricing at any time in whatever load that they're in. So that covers LaneIQ network. Now I'm going to pass it over to David Lazar for reviewing our auto creation of API and stored rate quotes on load creation.
Thanks, Dave. The Save and Rate feature allows users to both create a load as well as generate quotes with just the click of a button. Let's test it out. We're going to create an SMC3 LTL load with a 53-foot trailer. I'm going to do the same address as the customer. Going to Chicago Pizza. £800 of pizza on 4 pallets with a class 125. And we are going to save and rate. So right now the load is generating. And after that completes, it is also now creating quotes. And you'll see 2 spots in which the quotes are generated, both under the Quotes and Invoices tab. You'll see a handful of different providers, as well as the total rate. And then also on the Freight Quote Assistant, you'll see on the carrier side of the service, you'll have a handful of carriers with their respected rate as well. Prior to the new Save and Rate feature, a user would have to create the load, and then after the load was created, go into the Freight Quote Assistant to generate quotes through their carrier network. This is allowing them to essentially do both tasks with just one click. So another cool feature that the user now has the ability to do is also clone one of the loads and generate a quote. So we're going to clone this load here and enable the Save and Rate box. We're going to clone 2 copies. And now the system is both creating the loads as well as generating the rating logic. And so I'm going to open up one of these loads here. And as you can see, within the load, you've already got 7 quotes generated with a handful of different carriers. And then also, in the Quotes and Invoices section, you'll notice that they also populate here as well. So that is our new Save and Rate feature that will drastically speed up the workflows for our users. And I'll send it back to Dave.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. I know a lot of our customers have been requesting that feature for a while now, so hopefully you all are excited to hear and utilize that. So moving on to the next feature that we're going to be taking a look at is the mass import and update of third-party user credentials. So this is one that I think a lot of the system admins out there are going to be excited to see and happy to start using. And to demonstrate this video, we're actually going to hand it over to one of our newer product managers, Bruce Odom. Bruce, take it away.
Well, thank you, Dave. My name is Bruce Odom. I'm here to show you a little bit about how we've created a mass credential upload. Very important to your organization, because this is going to allow you to create security policies, allow you to change passwords on a regular basis, whether you want to do this weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannually. But it's very important that you maintain your credential passwords and usernames so that you're protected from getting hacking and theft. I'm going to show you some of the features that we've installed today, starting with the first one, which is important. Before, you had to have security admin to change a single credential. Now each user will have the ability to go to the main page. They'll be able to roll down to the section that says truck stop load posting and be able to change their user credentials. And remember, this is only their user credentials. And it's very important they understand what they're putting in there and entering it, otherwise they're going to have to go back and set this again. The other one, which is really going to allow you to manage corporate policies, is the mass upload of user credentials. And this makes it easy because we've created several of the credential environments that you can use this in, and simply you go to the TMS admin, you would select credentials, and there's a new feature here called mass import. Once you select mass import, you're going to see this very important piece here, which is use this file for formatting data for upload. That's going to give you an Excel spreadsheet template to follow. It has all the instructions at the top of the template on how to format it, where to put your data, and enter your information in. The key is, and this is something we had to go through a lot of testing and experimenting on, is when you get to the sections that allow a IP range, you want to make sure that is entered correctly. It has to be done with a piping character in between, and we've got instructions here on how to follow that. When you're entering this data and following along in the instructions, you're going to see that I've created 3 customers here now. It's very important that your users are set up already in your system and you've got them set in there. Then you can fill out the format in this Excel spreadsheet, and once that is done, you want to save this as a CSV file. You can validate it, look at your CSV file, and again, I'm going to highly recommend that you look at a few of the locations of where you have a IP range and make sure it is in this format. It's very important that it's in that correct format so it uploads correctly. Once you have that done, upload your CSV file. You'll see that it's processing. It's going to tell you it's done. Then you're going to be presented that it was successful upload, and now you're waiting for the processing to complete. You'll get back an email that tells you if this is correct or which row has errors in it, and it'll allow you to correct what changes you need to make on this. So you'll see I just received an email back that told me that the 3 rows were processed correctly, and this will be your indication that you can go in and look at your credential upload. Once you receive that email, go back into your credentials, and you're going to see here that all my users have been successfully uploaded and checked, and it tells you which ones have been done. You can validate them by clicking on the user and going in, and in this particular case, let's go here to new user 2, who I did have a IP range on, and you'll see that it is in the correct format here. This is extremely important, and you can validate. Just go through a few of them. Highly recommend that you validate that your information is correct, and then you'll see how easy it is to accomplish this on a regular basis. Again, I can't express more than making sure that you do this, setting up a good security policy, getting your credentials uploaded on a regular basis and changing them. It only protects yourself, your company, and your liabilities. So I highly recommend that you use these features. That's what they're there for. And appreciate your time. And Dave, back to you.
Thanks, Bruce. A lot of cool stuff with that new feature. The next item that we're going to move on to is a new feature that we're calling Load Email Communication Defaults. So this is another extremely cool feature, one that has a fondness in my heart. I know I would have loved to use this feature back when I was implementing a handful of our newer customers. So I think a lot of you will be excited to hear about this. And to demonstrate this one, another one of our newer product managers, Christine Sweeney. Christine?
Thanks, Dave. I want to show everybody now in 7-Eleven we've released load emails, and it will really help you with the efficiency of sending emails in the system. So now let's get to the demo. This is the first piece to show you, is that basically we've created an object called load emails that allows us to store contacts that can then be put onto the load for your emails. And so what emails are we talking about? The ones that the system sends. So we've got the two customer ones, the invoice and the quote load confirmation. And then we have the carrier ones, which is the really big one everybody's asked for, which is quoting, tendering, and status. So what you're seeing now is I've set up a flow in the background that, based on the mode, will take the contacts that you see here and associate those with the load and with those documents. So here you can see I have LTL contacts and I've got truckload contacts. So now we're going to go over to the load that I've created. I'm going to clone it to show you that this is the power of what this does. I'm going to copy the carrier quote and create. Now we're going to go into the new load. And in the new load, the first thing we're going to go to is system. System is where you'll see this load emails. Again, it's a page layout. You can put this wherever it works for you. We just have it under system. And the load emails now is based on the fact that this is a truckload shipment. This is who we want to have in the CC for the customer invoice, CC for the carrier, a 2 in the carrier load tender and the quote, and the BCC here. So we have all different contacts that you do 2 CCs or BCCs that got stamped on the load. So when I go to send my customer invoice, I will always copy in my customer invoice truckload at revenova.com. When I send my carrier load status, I'm going to CC my customer service at Revenova. So you can design this exactly as you want it and as your org works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add manually one. So if you don't do a flow or you don't do a trigger to do this, you can also manually add. And this shows you more about how the feature works. Here are the available documents. I can pick whichever document I want. So let's talk about the carrier load tender. What kind of email recipient type do I want? Do I want in the 2, the CC, or the BCC? Here I'm going to pick a CC. And here you have 3 different ways that you can add this. You can pick a contact. I can do a user. So here I'm going to send to my man Dave. He's going to get a CC on this. Or I could type in the email address. So either way that you do it, it will now say for this load 19, for the carrier load tender, I'm going to CC Dave. Then I hit save. Now let's take a look at how that works. Fly over to the Freight Quote Assistant. We hit our magic tender button. Now remember, this is internal distribution. There's already, for email carrier 1, there's already a distribution there. This is allowing you to set your internal users to be added to the email. So I've got my carrier truckload, Dave's getting a CC, I can see my C Sweeney 2 is a BCC, and this came from the carrier. And that's it. It works like that, like I said, on the load status for the carrier, the tender, the quote, and for the customer invoice as well as a customer quote tender. All right. So in summary, remember what this is going to do for you is it's going to allow you to set contacts on your loads for distributions to your 2s, your CCs, or your BCCs, so that you can copy in the groups in your organization that you want. Using a flow or a trigger, you can then also configure it to say by mode, by division, by agent, whatever you want to do. Really powerful to allow you to get those communications out as you need them to.
Thanks, Christine. I can already think of a number of different ways that our customers can use that feature, so very exciting stuff. Moving on, the next feature that we're going to be taking a look at is the auto application of load accessorials. And to review that is our Senior Product Manager, Alyssa Norcross. Alyssa?
Thanks, Dave. Today we're going to be discussing auto apply accessorials. These accessorials are usually not service-based, so they're accessorials that the carriers will define in their rules tariff, and they're not usually negotiated in your general contract. Because of that, these accessorials are usually not accounted for when you're building a load. So this auto apply accessorial feature will allow your users to have the most accurate quotes with no hidden costs at the time of quoting. All right, let's take a look. So first thing, I'm building a zone, since the example I'm going to use is a zone-based, geography-based accessorial rate entry. So I have one built here for Golden, Colorado, which outlines a couple zip codes where this high cost charge would be applicable. So since I have that already created, I'll go into a rate entry and build a new one. So I'm going to use my SMC3 customer. I'll make the status accepted. The mode will be LTL. Category is a carrier rate entry. Since these rate entries and these accessorials are usually based on a specific carrier, so ABF might charge for going into specific zip codes in Colorado where SDs will not. So you're going to want to define that at the carrier level. So I'll go ahead and do a high cost delivery. My lane will be all of the US to Golden, Colorado. And this is the new auto apply checkbox. So by applying that checkbox as true, this will make sure that this accessorial rate entry automatically applies anytime I build a load from the US into those zip codes in Colorado. I'll go ahead and select ABF. And the rate method, I'll do a fixed cost, and we'll make it for $45. From there, I'll save this accessorial rate entry, and then I'm going to build a load so you can see the feature in action. So I'll use that same customer. Mode is LTL. Picking up in Illinois, which is in the US, obviously. And then I have a location built out that is one of the zip codes in Colorado that was on my zone. And then I will add the line item details. Make this 800 pounds, 1 pallet, standard size. Okay, so after building this load, I'll hop into the FQA and we'll see that the auto apply accessorial is already on the load. Okay, so you can see for SDs Express, since there was no auto apply accessorial rate entry, it doesn't apply, which is exactly how we would want it to work, since SDs might not charge for delivering into those zip codes. However, if I go into ABF rate, you can see on the carrier quote, the accessorial is already there with the $45 fee. Okay, it really is that easy to make sure that your accessorials for your carriers are auto-applied, so there's no hidden costs, and your users have the most accurate quotes at the time of quoting. All right, Dave, back to you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Moving on, we're going to transition from the new feature set into the new list of enhancements. The first enhancement on the list is the load tracking administration, and our product manager, Liam Purcell, will be taking you through that. Liam?
Thanks, Dave. In our Revenova 7.11 release, we made several enhancements to our load tracking enhancements page and the tracking process as a whole. Take a look. Upon opening the load tracking administration page, you'll notice a few changes right off the bat. First and foremost, you'll see that we have added 3 new sections containing information related to the load, the customer information, and the carrier information. Now, each of these sections are field set driven, allowing you to customize the appearance of the load tracking administration page for your users. You'll also notice a few new fields on the page specific to the MacroPoint integration. These fields include tracking notes and the tracking update email list. The tracking notes field will simply add these notes to the MacroPoint page, as well as will appear in the update emails that are sent out according to our second field, which is the tracking update email list. The emails listed in this field will be included on any updates generated within MacroPoint. An interesting feature about these 2 fields is that they can be defaulted at the customer transportation profile level. So I will jump to a customer transportation profile, scroll down to customer load tracking, And you can see I have the tracking notes and the tracking update email list corresponding to those two fields that you saw earlier within the TP. Anything you enter in here simply shows up as the default, but you can absolutely, back within my load, change these notes according to your own preferences. Additionally, you can jump to the carrier transportation profile, scroll down to the tracking section, and find the tracking provider field. This works just like the defaults that I showed you on the customer TP. This field defaults the tracking provider based on the carrier that appears when you first open the load tracking administration modal. If you set macro point, that 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 macro point. In addition to these additional fields, these new information sections, we've also made some changes to the appearance of the page as the tracking process runs. To show you how that works, I will jump into a quick tracking session, set up an example duration and update interval, and you can see that once I set my tracking session to on, what's happening here is that we're calling out to MacroPoint to initiate that tracking session, including updating the list of emails that will also receive updates when MacroPoint generates a status update. Now that our tracking session is on, I want to show you that jumping off of the page, navigating to any other section of the load, and then navigating back to the page persistently stores the settings that you used when you initiated that session. You now see that the tracking duration I chose and the tracking update interval I chose at the very beginning will stay with you throughout the life of the load until you eventually turn off the tracking session, and it will reset to our defaults just like we had when we opened the page at first. The last thing I want to show you is that we've also updated the process of removing carriers from the load in terms of how it relates to the tracking process. So I will elect to remove my carrier, Liverpool Reds Transport, from this load by clicking the Remove Carrier button. And you can see before I do that I have a load tracking session still initiated. When I remove the carrier, not only is the system now removing the carrier from the load and resetting the statuses, it's also calling out to my tracking provider, stopping that tracking session, and resetting the information to the defaults. Whereas previously you may have had to take multiple steps to complete this process, it now is completed in one fell swoop when you remove the carrier from the load. As you can see, we've made multiple enhancements to the load tracking process in 7-Eleven that we believe will make it quicker and easier for your users. Dave?
Thank you, Liam. And to round out our demos, the final enhancement that we're going to be reviewing today is the Falvey Insurance Automation. And to review this, we're bringing back Alyssa. Alyssa, take it away.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to be discussing the Falvey integration enhancements. We've updated the integration to the latest Falvey API, which increases the response time. And we've also taken the opportunity to enhance the user experience so that manual processes are now automated. All right, enough chit chat, let's dive in. The first thing that you'll want to make sure is set up correctly is on the TMS admin, the Use Platform Events Insurance checkbox is checked, as well as making sure that your credentials for Falvey are enabled. If you're a previous user of Falvey, this shouldn't need to change, but if you're new to the integration, you want to make sure these are enabled. From there, if you want to opt in or opt out and automate the process, you'll go to a specific transportation profile for a customer, and you'll scroll down to the internal cargo insurance option field, and you can decide which functionality you want for the automation. So opt out will automate the pricing, the insurance to actually insure the freight, as well as adding the insurance amount to the customer quote. And then opting in will automate the pricing call, and then your users can manually decide if they want to insure or add it to the customer quote. So for this demo, I'll go ahead and do the opt out. And then you'll also want to select any internal cargo insurance modes that you want this automation to apply to. So for the demo, I've selected all modes, but for example, if you only want to insure Boston Beans freights for LTL, you would make sure that only LTL mode is selected here. So I'll go ahead and hit save. And then I'm going to build a load so that we can see the automation in action. So I'm going to build a load for that same customer, Boston Beans. I'm going to select a mode that I know is enabled for the automation and build the load, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar. So I'll go to Chicago Pizza. Add some line item details. Select a class and hit save. Since we're insuring this freight, cargo value is going to be a required field in order to receive insurance information back from Falvey. So I'll go ahead and make sure I have a cargo value entered on this load. We'll make this $6,000. Hit save, and then once I go to the FQA, you'll see that the customer quote is in accepted status, which triggers the automation. And all I have to do is hit refresh, and you'll see that the insurance relevant fields are populated in the insurance LWC. So you can see the total insurance premium is calculated. It's in an offered status since we added it automatically to the customer quote. And you have all of the same pertinent reference numbers that we get back from the Falvey integration, like the insurance certificate and the date that it was insured. A few other updates to the integration is now we receive a insurance certificate PDF, where previously we were receiving a PDF document. So now you can actually access this or hide it if you don't want certain users to have access to that on the page layout. And then we are also now exposing the underlining charges that comprise of the total insurance premium. So what I mean by that is back on the insurance LWC, you can see that there's a total insurance premium here. Previously, this is the only amount that we showed via the integration, but now you can add fields to the TMS 36 field set on the load to display the service and technology fee if it's applicable to your org. So I'll go ahead and add those so you can see them on the widget. So I'll go ahead and do a quick refresh. And like I said, since these are now added to the field set, they're available and seen on the LWC. So again, it's just offering greater price transparency to your users. So these enhancements to the Falvey insurance integration allow your users to have quicker response time from the Falvey API, as well as automate a lot of the manual processes in insuring your freight. All right, Dave, back to you.
Thanks very much, Alyssa, and that rounds out the live demos that we'll be giving. But before we move to the Q&A portion, there is one last slide, hopefully painless, that I want to run through that highlights a handful of the other new features that we really want to share with you. Didn't warrant the demo piece of it, but we did want to make sure that you were aware of these new features. So the first item on the list here is the Revenova Accounting Pub/Sub API integration. So I know that's a mouthful, so just bear with me. I want to give you a brief overview of what it is, because it's really a cool feature that we're all very excited about here at Revenova. So Pub/Sub stands for Publish and Subscribe, and basically what we've done with this brand new API is we've enabled you, our customer base, to integrate any accounting platform of your choice with Revenova, as long as that accounting platform can access the Salesforce event bus, their Pub/Sub API. So we have a number of different accounting platforms that our customers use today, and with this new API, we've expanded that reach even further. One of the newest integrations that we're looking into is a Microsoft Business Central integration with this new API. So a lot of cool stuff, and really expands the functionality and usability of the system to choose your accounting platform of choice. The next items I'll try to run through a little bit more quickly. First one being the ability to create e-payments without recipients. So this was another request that we had from a number of different customers that really they didn't have the recipients saved in their system, but they still wanted to issue e-payments. We've enabled that now. Next, more of a kind of platform processing type of enhancement, and that is the MacroPoint and Trucker Tools inbound tracking updates are now processed via platform events. So that effectively reduces the number of queue transactions being processed by the queue transactions job, which hopefully many of you are familiar with. So really just enhancing the performance of the system overall. Next, we have significant enhancements to the RFP upload performance. So the RFP upload tool has a number of different upload jobs that run as it's processing, and we've significantly improved the performance of that job to speed things up. And then the last one on the other enhancements list here is we made several additions and adjustments to the field sets that are on each of the objects. I won't bore you with the details of running through each of these, but just know that there were several requests for added fields to these different field sets to be used within and throughout the application. And so we've listened, we've heard, and we've added a lot more fields back to those field sets. So that concludes the list of features and enhancements that we wanted to run through today with the webinar. And so what we're going to move to now is the Q&A. So what I would ask, as I started the meeting with, is any questions that you might have, please please type them into the Q&A chat box at the bottom of the RingCentral app, and we'll address them as we go. And I see that we already have a handful that have been queuing up. So without further ado, let's dive into the Q&A. A handful of questions related to LaneIQ. So the first one on the list here, I think it's probably a popular one for a lot of folks. So LaneIQ pricing info. The question is, I know that the first 6 months will be free possibly, but what is it going to look like after that? So yeah, just to reiterate, the LaneIQ Network tool will be free through the end of June of this year. So June 30th, I think, is kind of the last official day of free service. And then after that, this service is going to be priced at $250 per month. So it'll basically be another service similar to a charge line item on your yearly invoice, where it's part of kind of the org fee, if you will. So $250 a month is what we'll be charging for that service post the first 6-month free trial. Okay, next question that we have here. Are you able to opt out of the LaneIQ network at any time? So the simple answer is yes. So you can opt out should you choose. However, like I just said, the pricing for the service is kind of a year-long contract. So if you opt in for the first 6 months, that obviously you can opt out at the end of that, or you can opt out at any time during the first 6 months for the free trial period. But then after that, if you've signed on to continue to use the service, then that's part of your service agreement for the year. So it probably wouldn't be worth it to deactivate the feature after you've paid for it. But yes, you can. But I think the more people use it, the more they're going to see the value that it adds, and we're really excited about it. And a lot more to come, I think, with that tool just in general. And in fact, we got a few questions that I saw in the queue that are directly related to some of the ideas that we had. So we're going to continue to kind of build on that tool, and I think folks are going to like what they see. Okay, the next question related to the save and rate tool. So the question is, does the save and rate apply to all internal rates as well as integrations? So I think this question is referring to API rates like Project 44, as well as stored internal rates, customer carrier internal rates. And the short answer is yes. So it's going to hit all of your rate entries, API, stored rates, what have you. So yes, everything will be hit by that save and rate. Anything else to add, team?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, next question on the list here. For LaneIQ data and rates being fed into the tool, is that coming only from loads that have moved, or does that also include quotes that have come in from carriers? Simple, easy answer for that is it's going to be all spot rate quotes that come in. So even loads that you don't end up moving, or if you have, let's say, 10 different carrier quotes that come in, and obviously you only choose one of them to actually move the load, all of that data will be sent up into the LaneIQ network. So it's not just the moved loads, it's not just the accepted loads, it's all carrier quote data. So really, we're going to have a very strong repository of a number of different, all of the Revenova customers providing their data for that. You're going to get a really good idea of what pricing there is out there in real time. And maybe just to expound on that a little bit more, I had mentioned we have thoughts of, this is our first step into this space, but we also have ideas in line with, and Liam can probably touch on this a little bit more too, but in line with our new TMS analytics tool and also some LWCs that we're thinking about building there, wherein we'll have the data. Obviously, it's going to be anonymized in our cloud repository, but we'll have the data, which also means that we'll have both the carrier rate data for rates that weren't accepted, but also the rates that were accepted and the carrier actually booked and moved the load. So it's similar to DAT and the truck stop rates that show you the booked versus paid, that kind of paradigm. So we'll be able to eventually parse out the data and such that it'll show you, this is what the rate was average for all carrier quotes at this point in time. And then once the load actually moves, then we'll be able to show actual booked rate. So like I said, a lot more to come, I think, on this LaneIQ network and the data that we're going to have from this tool. So this is kind of step number one. We're going to walk before we run, but we're excited about it. Okay, moving on. Next question, again, related to the save and rate tool. So the question is, can the save and rate button on load entry be omitted if a customer doesn't have LTL business or any stored rates? Another simple short answer, you guys are making it easy for me. The answer is yes. So there's a configuration setting. It's a simple checkbox that allows you to enable or disable the save and rate button if you do or don't want to show it on your new load creation page. Okay, continuing. Next question related to the load emails. So for the load emails, is there a way to set a dynamic value as the CC email recipient? For example, always CC the account rep of the account. So again, simple answer is yes. It will require slight amount of configuration on your end. And by that, I mean the table itself is really just a kind of static table where you can define those either manually, or if you wanted to build your own flow to create those records within the table, you can do that as well. And it's a relatively simple, straightforward flow that you can create. A number of different ways that you can populate that table, but it can be dynamic based on your business needs there. Okay, next question. The question is, will the auto apply rate entry only apply during the quote creation or at any time a quote is updated and or accessed via the FQA? And for that one, I think I might throw it over to Alyssa. Why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so for this one, if you want to reach out and we can go over your specific use cases, but at a high level, yes. So if you create a quote and then you access the FQA, every time you go into the FQA, that accessorial should be present. And then as far as updating, if you say change the location and it's a high cost delivery, if you go back into the FQA after adjusting that zip code and you hit refresh quotes on the FQA, it'll then pull in that accessorial. But again, if I didn't touch on your specific use cases, to go ahead and contact me and we can walk through that.
Perfect, thank you, Alyssa. Okay, the next one looks like it's related to macro point integration. So Liam, I think I'll probably throw this one over to you. And the question is, does the carrier see the tracking nodes input in the MacroPoint integration?
Sure. I believe you're referring to that notes field that I pointed out in the demo. That notes field shows up in the MacroPoint interface itself, and then also on any emails that go to those emails listed. So whether it ends up in the hands of the carrier is dependent on whether you include a carrier email in that field, but by default, I don't believe that ends up showing to the carrier.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Next question here. Is there a history tracking of the email tracking list field used for MacroPoint updates? What happens if this field is updated after the tracking has been initiated? Liam, I'll let you take that one as well.
Yep, so in terms of history tracking, that list of emails that get an update, that's a field on the load. You can add that to the list of fields that get tracked or changes. So you can notice any changes that happen there. If you make a change while the tracking session has already been enabled, you'll obviously have to send up an update to MacroPoint. And we have that little update button on the load tracking admin LWC. So that allows you to do just that.
Right, right. Okay, moving on. Another LaneIQ Network question. Is there an option to use the LaneIQ Network without having to build a load? How would this enhancement be used to quote a customer on the fly? So first of all, great question. And the product team here has had very similar ideas as well. As of today, with this release, the LaneIQ Network tool can't explicitly be used to do quoting on the fly without creating a load. But as we were kind of building this tool and really just looking at the LaneIQ tool in general, and obviously having a lot of feedback from various customers, we've recognized and realized that that tool really is a powerful tool that doesn't necessarily need to live in the context of a load. And as you know, you can have your LaneIQ tool, on its own tab, so it doesn't live on a load. But we do see a lot of value in adding not only the LaneIQ network, but also the RateIQ calculation tool as well to LaneIQ network. So in short order, we're going to be taking kind of another look at the LaneIQ tool in general and basically revamping it. So I think that the plan will be to add, like I said, not only the LaneIQ network data into that tool, but also just RateIQ in general. So you'll have a much quicker, easier way to get quotes on the fly without needing to create a load, among other things. We have ideas about quick quoting, but great idea, and it's something that is already on our minds and on the horizon. So more to come on that, and really the first step, as I mentioned, is getting this network in place, getting our cloud repository in place, and then of course, having our customers, yourselves opting in, so the data is there to be used. So would highly encourage you to get upgraded and start using the feature, because the more people that use it, the better. And obviously, if I didn't mention this, I'll say it again. All of the data that goes up is 100% anonymized, so there's no security breaches. There's nothing like that. It'll be fully anonymized data, and it's a secure service. So shouldn't be any worries there. Okay, next question. Another LaneIQ Network question, which is great. I love it. For LaneIQ Network, is the data from other companies scrubbed for outliers/errors? So this was something that we had thought about as we were building the tool. And initially, our go-in stance is that we're not going to be scrubbing the data for outliers. It's going to be all of the data that comes in. So that's kind of the approach that we took going in, to see what the data looks like. And then as we go, if we do see issues where there is significant outliers, the top 10 or bottom 10%, and we want to scrub that, we can. But for the start and where we're at right now, we're not doing any scrubbing for outliers. Okay, next question, another LaneIQ question. Regarding LaneIQ, you mentioned that the repository of the data is cloud-based, but where exactly is it located? Thinking from a security and anonymization of data standpoint, and where it is all collected. So admittedly, I don't know the explicit answer to that question. We can get more details if you're curious about the security protocols and things that we have in place. That's something that's a little bit more technical and above my pay grade here, but we can certainly, I see the person who asked the question, so we can certainly get you more detail, and really anybody that's curious, feel free to reach out and we can share that information with everyone. Okay, another question, Bruce, you got a shout out. So hi, Bruce, hope all has been well. Sounds like looks like Bruce is doing well. We love to have him on the team.
It's a great team.
Okay, next question. How much is it gonna cost? I'm assuming this is referring to LaneIQ Network, so I'll just reiterate. So the pricing will be $250 per month. So that's, what is that, times 12, I think it's 3,300 a year, something like that, but it's $250 a month is what the charge will be for that.
3,000.
3,000, okay.
I get a star.
All right, next question, another LaneIQ. For LaneIQ, do you have logic in the system to back out fuel for spot quotes that are line haul only so that you do not skew the line haul rate per mile calculation? That's a fantastic question, a great point. We do not, so we're not backing out, at least initially. So the kind of, to get into some of the details, technical details around this, the good part is we will have that data. So that data will be coming up into the cloud repository. But for this kind of phase one, step one implementation of the LaneIQ data feedback into the TMS, since the RateIQ tool is really a single data point, right? It's an average based on all of the data that gets aggregated. Right now, it's just freight. And now that I say that, I actually might be wrong about that. We might actually split freight and fuel out now that I think about it. That's a very good question. We will get back to you on that one. I know that we do have the data in the repository, but I'm forgetting off the top of my head if it does break out line haul versus fuel. So I'll write that down as a follow-up.
I've got it.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that one. So good question. Okay, next question. For LaneIQ, is there a way to see the size of the data set used in the calculation to see if the average is across 5 entries or 5,000? Absolutely. So if you're familiar with the RateIQ tool, that's exactly what it shows. So it'll show you the number of quotes and the number of loads that constitute what make up that rate. And if you're using RateIQ today, then you'll see that today from the different providers. So this is just yet another stream. And like I said, the more customers that use the tool, obviously, the larger the data set is just going to continue to grow. So, so yes.
Also, I phoned a friend over here, and LaneIQ does break down freight and fuel.
It does. Excellent. Okay. Look at that. Quick answers on the fly. So just to reiterate what Alyssa just said. So the question earlier was, does the LaneIQ Network tool that feeds the data back into your TMS, does it break out line haul and fuel so you're not skewing your line haul rate per mile calculations? And the answer is yes. So it does do that. Okay. Next, LaneIQ Network question. When you opt in, is all the load repository of data shared with Revenova, or only new loads will be shared into the network? How do we know what details are being sent into the network? So right now, it's only going to be new loads once you opt in. So we're not pulling or grabbing any of your old historical load data. It's really when you opt in and everything is active, then moving forward, then after that point, it'll be any new spot rate carrier quotes that get sent up. And then as far as the details that are being sent into the network, it's really the data that you see on the quote. So it'll be the carrier name, the rate information, the lane. Trying to think if there's anything else. And yeah, I mean, if you're very curious, feel free to ping us on the side, and we can get you an explicit list of that data. But it's really just the carrier quote data, and some details around the load that make the data useful in the context of LaneIQ. Okay, next question. How do we go about opting into LaneIQ Network? So I'm very happy to hear that question. The opting in process, it'll be basically something that's initiated by the Revenova side. Well, I should say it starts with you guys. So when you're ready for your upgrade to the 7.11 release, and you contact the help desk to get that release installed, as part of that back and forth and communication, the help desk will be sending an opt-in contract to you as part of that upgrade process. So basically you would submit the case with the help desk as you normally do for an upgrade process, and then before they do the upgrade, they'll send you that opt-in contract, which you would then sign and return. And then after that, then it's basically the upgrade process happens normally. I'll have to find out how we're managing the activation of credentials. I think it will still be just the, as we're doing the upgrades, the credentials will be created and entered for you as part of the upgrade process. But I can follow up on that one as well and find out. Okay, next question. We're 3 minutes left. I'll try to get through some of these, the rest of these. Would a potential alternative to scrubbing, I'm assuming they mean scrubbing data for LaneIQ Network, be a toggle to filter accepted quotes versus not accepted quotes? Yep, that's absolutely an alternative, and kind of what I touched on earlier, which will be, and in fact, since we're talking about it, maybe we'll just share what Liam's next big assignment that he's working on right now is. We're looking at building another LWC that functions effectively as a stock ticker that will show average accepted carrier quote on this lane, as well as average to all quotes. So you'll be able to see, similar to how some of the other providers in our industry, rate providers in our industry do it, we'll have aggregate timeline-based data that shows average quotes in general and then average accepted quote in general. That's one of the ideas on the horizon. Liam, I'm not sure if you want to add anything more to that.
No, not much. That, like Dave said, we've got a lot of ways that we're thinking about visualizing that LaneIQ network data, and it will involve a lot of the different toggles and filters that were mentioned here. So we're excited to get that in front of you as well.
Right. Okay, try to get through the last of these. Got a couple minutes left. Am I correct to assume LaneIQ is only collecting data for transportation loads and not fleet? I think it kind of depends on what you mean by that. So it's any spot carrier quote. So if you're building carrier quotes in your system for your fleet, then I suppose those would go up. Although I'm not 100% confident on that. So that's another one that we'll probably have to follow up on. I'm not sure if we have provisions that would prevent non-fleet load or non-fleet quotes from going up. So a good question, another one that we can follow up on. Okay, and I think I have time for enough time for one more, so we'll try to get it. Is the data for LaneIQ Network uploaded / collected into the repository in a batch? Is it each carrier quote as created? Thinking about how this will impact platform performance. Great question. So it is not a batch. It is on creation. So the way that it actually works is we're leveraging Salesforce's high volume platform event architecture. So similar to how we moved some of our queue transaction activity off of the queue transactions batch job and onto platform events, which are asynchronous, instantaneous activity. It's the same thing for the carrier quote upload into the repository. So when you save that quote, that will kick off a platform event that executes asynchronously. So basically no impact to performance. It happens on its own thread asynchronously. All right, well, it's 2 o'clock. So I just want to extend a word of thanks to everyone for their time and attention here. Like I said, we're very excited about this release, and there's still a lot more to come in 2024. So we hope you guys are excited as well, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much.